Okay, Fortunately the Milk, part 6. We were in the middle of a very familiar volcanic eruption. Quickly, I said, give me the emerald. A little way away, I could see a balloon being blown through the sky, while fire and ash were swept around it by the wind. I could see me in the balloon, standing next to Professor Stegg, with my mouth open. I looked miserable. My Professor Stegg, gave me the emerald. I raced down the rope ladder and placed the emerald back into the face's eye. Then, as the volcano stopped erupting, I looked around for the milk. I knew it had landed on Splod's head when it fell. Fortunately, the milk had fallen into a small drift of volcanic ash and was unharmed. I picked it up, brushed it off, and started back up the balloon's ladder. Professor Stegg pressed the button. The sky went dark, and we were floating above the landscape of ominous towers and disquieting castles. It was not a friendly place. Bats flew across the sky in huge flocks, crowding out the waning moon. I don't like this place, I told the professor. I don't see why not, he said. It looks as if it would have been very nice when the sun comes up. There was a loud flut, and where the bats had been fluttering, several pallid people were now standing. The man in front had a very bald head, and they all had sharp teeth. "We are vampires," they said. "What is this? Who are you? Answer us, or we will vivisect you." "I'm Professor Stegg," boomed the Stegosaurus. "This is my assistant. We are on an important mission. I am trying to get back to the present. My assistant is trying to get home to the future for breakfast." At the word breakfast, all the vampires looked very excited. "We have not had our breakfast," they told us. "We normally have wiggly worms with orange juice on them. Orange juice makes worms even wigglier, like wandering spaghetti. But we cannot eat worms. We will eat assistant, or even roast professor." One of the vampires took out a fork and looked me up and down in a hungry sort of way. The baldest, most bulging-eyed, rattiest of the vampires said, "What is this box?" "It is my finest invention," began Professor Stegg proudly, but I interrupted. "It's to keep sandwiches in," I said. "Sandwiches?" said the vampire. "Sandwiches," I said, with as much certainty as I could muster. "We thought it was a time machine," said the head vampire, with a sly, sharp smile, "and we could use it to invade the world." "Definitely sandwiches," I told him. "What happens if I press this button then?" asked the lady vampire. She had long black hair that covered most of her face and peered out into the world with one suspicious eye. She pressed the button. We went forward 6 hours in time. "See," said the professor happily. "All this place needs is to brighten up with a bit of sunshine." The head vampire said, "What?" and dissolved into a cloud of oily black smoke. So did all his friends. "Yes," I said, "it is a nice place here after all, in the daylight." The professor tinkered with the jewels and the string and the buttons, and then he said, "I think I've got this properly fine-tuned now. This next press should bring you back to your own time, place, and breakfast." But before the tip of his tail could touch the button, a voice said, "I'll explain later. Fate of the world at stake." A hand grabbed, and the milk, which I had carried safely for so long, was gone. I turned in time to catch a glimpse of the fine-looking gentleman with his back to me, holding my milk. And then The hole in space through which he had reached was closed. "My milk!" "He said he'd explain later," said Professor. I'd be inclined to believe him. The hole in space opened again, and a voice shouted, "Catch!" And the milk came rocketing through. Fortunately, the milk struck me in my stomach, and in clutching my hands to my belly, I caught the milk. "There," said the Professor, "everything is back to normal." "He did say he'd explain later," I pointed out, and that wasn't much of an explanation. "But it's not later yet," said Professor Stegg. "It's still now. It won't be later until later." He was arranging pebbles and stones and string on top of the time machine box. "Final coordinates entered," he said, "and then it's off to your house for breakfast."